So I grew up on the coast of Connecticut. Wonderful place to be. My grandmother had a house right on Long Island Sound, and so I was on the beach and in the water a lot, but I was not on the water very much. Didn't do much boating, didn't do much sailing. I tend to get motion sickness, and so being out on the water was not fun for me, nor anyone with me. And so I really don't know much about sailing. I don't know much about navigation on the water. But one of the navigational tools that is out there, it's been out there since 1731 to help you get direction and find where you are, is called the sextant. And so I bought one, and I've been kind of playing around with it this week. This is not a deep scientific one. I wasn't going to spend quite that much money, but I have figured out a little bit how to use one. And if you don't know what a sextant does, you look through here, and what you see is kind of a divided picture, and you line up one half with the horizon, and the other one you turn the little angle, you turn the sextant until you line the sun or the moon, or even the North Star, but you get the light from the sky in line with the horizon. And then when you get them lined up, you just screw it down, you get the angle, and somehow that angle and the exact time of day tell you where you are. Last week we talked about magnetic north and true north, and I told you, don't ask me any more than what I just told you, because I don't know. What I just told you about the sextant is all that I know, so don't ask me much more about it. It's actually a fascinating little tool. I have enjoyed kind of trying to play around with it. It takes a while to get used to any kind of thing like this, but the reason that I'm talking about it is that while this might help you find out where you are on the ocean, it also kind of shows us spiritually how we can find our way. So while a sextant brings the light of the heavens in line with our horizon, and that tells us where we are and where we need to go, what we need to do is bring the light of Jesus into our horizon. We bring the light of Jesus in line with our life, and it tells us where we are. And it gives us the direction of where we need to go. So we bring the light of Jesus into our lives. In the Gospel of John, Jesus gave 7 I am statements. Last week we heard that Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. And as a good shepherd, Jesus is the one who will lead us and guide us to good places. He will lead us to the fullness of life. If we will listen to his voice, the sheep hear the shepherd's voice. If we will listen to his voice, we will find ourselves in good places. And so we will find life, we'll find direction, we'll find our way if we will listen to the good shepherd. Well, also in the Gospel of John, Jesus said, I am the light of the world. John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus spoke again to the people and said, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but have the light of life. Whoever follows me. When we take the light of Jesus and bring it into our lives, when we follow where that leads us, we will find the fullness of life. Once again, Jesus tells us that part of the goal, part of what we need to do is we need to listen to him. We need to understand what it means for him to be the light. We need to bring that light into our lives, and when we follow that, we find our way. So what is light? Well, light is, and again, I am not a scientist. Light is the electromagnetic radiation that is visible to the human eye. I don't know what that means. All I know is that there are particles out there. Light is particles, but light is also movement. And so it's the electromagnetic particles that are visible to our eye, and it makes light. What I do know is that the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. So light is not static. It moves, and it moves fast. This is how fast light moves. The circumference of the earth at the equator is 24,900 miles. So in 1 second, light can travel around the earth 7 times. That kind of boggled my mind. I can't even imagine 1 second, 7 times around. That's fast. I don't understand it. I don't get it. But light is fast. Now, most of our light comes from the sun. I mean, we have ambient kind of lighting, but most of our light comes from the sun. The sun is big. It's powerful. It's hot. The sun burns at 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface. Some people say that at the core it's 25 million degrees. I'm wondering how you figure that out. But the energy produced by the sun is equivalent to 1 billion nuclear bombs going off every second. So the sun is really powerful, and it's hot, and it's big, and it's massive, and it's what brings life. We need the light of the sun to give us life. And so light, when Jesus says he's the light of the world, we begin to think, well, he's powerful and he brings life. And 7 times around the world in a second makes me think it's always there. Like, Jesus is always there. Talked about that as the Good Shepherd. He's always present. But when Jesus makes this claim to be the light of the world, he's saying an awful lot. Now, the religious leaders in Jesus' day did not understand all the science of light, but they did understand that what Jesus was saying was radical and controversial, because light was associated with God. God was light. We can go back to the story of Genesis, the creation. What's the first thing God does? Well, Genesis chapter 1, verse 3, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. He called the light day, he called the darkness night, and there was evening and there was morning, the first day. So the very first thing God does is create light. That light is the first thing needed to sustain life. There can be no second, third, fourth, fifth day because light is needed first. And God spoke it into being. In many ways, God is the light that brings life to the world. It was also associated, light was also associated with God leading his people. If we go to the book of Exodus, we see that light is symbolic of God caring for, leading the people of Israel. Exodus chapter 13, verse 21, "By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night a pillar of fire," a light, to give them light so that they could travel by day or by night. So God is the light that creates the world. God is the light that somehow, formed the people of Israel and guided them in their journey, in their way. In the book of Exodus, we again see God and light being put together. This is the story of the light that burns in the temple. So from Exodus chapter 24, verses 1 and 2, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Command the Israelites to bring you clear oil of pressed olives for the light, so that the lamps may be kept burning continually.'" So once again, God is symbolized in the light that's in the temple. God is symbolized in the light of creation. God is the light that brings life to the world. And then God's the light that kind of forms and goes with God's people. And then light is continually to be in the temple. So when Jesus comes to say that, he is the light of the world, he's all this and more. What's interesting is that in the first 3 books of the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Jewish scriptures, we see God's association, connection with light. God is the light of creation. God is the light of Israel. God is the light in the temple. Notice something, though. Genesis, God's the light of creation. Exodus, God's the light of the people. Leviticus, God's the light in the temple. You notice something? The light's getting smaller. It's kind of diminishing. We went from God being the light to all the world, to God being the light of the people, to God being the light in the temple. And this diminishing of light that we see in the scriptures was not lost on the prophets. The prophets saw this growing darkness in the world, and so they talked about the time that a Messiah was going to come and bring back the light of God to all the world. And so the Messiah was going to be that light. And so again, we have from Isaiah chapter 9, the people walking in darkness, this growing kind of darkness, have seen a great light. Those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation, you've increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. And so the prophets talk about this darkness, this growing darkness, but the day is going to come when the people are going to live in the light. And what's that light going to do? It's going to bring life, a harvest. It's going to be victory, new life. It's going to be for all people. Everyone's going to rejoice. And so that little bit of light in the temple is going to grow once again and eventually become the light of the world. This is what the prophets are thinking when Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. The people have been walking in darkness, but I'm the light of the world. This is powerful, and this is radical. And this is what Jesus is saying. Jesus came to be the light of the world, to bring this light of God, to burst it forth out of the temple and into not only God's people, but through God's people into all the world. Jesus is the light that gives life to all those, all in the world, who what? Who will listen to him, who will follow him, who will bring the light of Jesus in line with their lives into their horizons. And so Jesus says, look, I'm the light of the world. But he not only says that, he not only makes that claim, but he says, let me tell you what the light of God, this light that I bring, let me tell you what it can do in your lives. And so Jesus shows us what the power of light can do in our own lives. And he tells us this, he shows us this by two stories. There's a biblical concept or idea that sometimes, not always, but sometimes two stories that kind of bookend a teaching define the stories. There are two times in the Gospel of John where Jesus talks about being the light of the world. John chapter 8 that we just heard, and John chapter 9. John chapter 9, Jesus says, while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. So Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. There's some conversation about what that means, and then Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. What does this light in our lives look like? All we have to do is look at the story that directly precedes it and directly follows it. Those stories show us the power of God's light in our lives. When we bring the light of Jesus in line with our horizon, when we bring the light of Jesus into our lives, this is what happens. And so we look at the first story. If we go back to John chapter 8, we hear the story of a woman who was caught in adultery being brought to Jesus. Now, the religious leaders have brought the woman so that Jesus can be tested. They're not really interested in righteousness or justice. The law said that people caught in adultery should be stoned to death, but they don't bring the woman and the man. They just bring the woman. They're not interested in justice. They're not interested in righteousness. They want to test Jesus. Jesus knows the law. And so he says to the people, okay, the law says you have to have two witnesses to pass judgment. So two of you who are without sin can be the first to cast a stone at her, pass judgment. Then Jesus bends down and he starts writing in the dirt. We don't know what Jesus wrote. Maybe most commentators think that Jesus started writing down perhaps the sins of the people there. gluttony, greed, lust, stealing, cheating, killing. He starts writing down the sins of the people there, kind of reminding them, you're not perfect. You also are a sinner. Do you want this kind of judgment? And as the people looked at it, one by one, they kind of dropped their stones and they walked away. And so at the very end, we have Jesus just standing there with this woman all alone. Jesus knows the law. You have to have 2 eyewitnesses to condemn someone. And so Jesus says to the woman, is there anyone here to condemn you? And she says, no. And Jesus says, neither do I condemn you. He could have. He would be the one without sin, right? He could have come at her with the power of condemnation and judgment, but he doesn't. He has compassion and he says, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. As the light of the world, Jesus doesn't come into our lives with the power of condemnation. He doesn't come with the power of judgment. He comes to bring compassion. He comes into all of our lives. The light of God comes into our lives. And we know we're deserving maybe of the power of condemnation, but Jesus comes with compassion. A compassion and grace that forgives us. Jesus even said, I did not come to condemn the world, but to save the world. I did not come to condemn you, but to have compassion for you. And so the light of Jesus coming into our lives brings a compassion, a love, a grace that forgives us. It sets us free. It helps us go and live a new life. It's what the light of Jesus does. And so we jump to the story immediately following the second time Jesus said, I'm the light of the world. This is from John chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. Jesus spit on the ground, made some mud with the saliva, and put it on a blind man's eye, a man who had been blind since birth. Go, he told him, wash in the pool of Siloam. This word means sent. So the man went and washed and came home seeing. A man who had been born blind, a man who was blind his entire life, a man who had been living in darkness, now has the power of sight. Jesus restored his vision. For his entire life, this man had only known darkness. And he was given the compassion of the people. They felt sorry for him. Maybe they gave him alms. They gave him money to help sustain his life. They had compassion. But they couldn't give him the power of vision. They couldn't really change his life. They couldn't really help him. But as the light of the world, Jesus doesn't come with kind of an empty compassionate words. He comes with the power of help, the power of light, changes the man's life. He does something tangible for him. And as the light of the world, Jesus gives power to those in need. They're compassionate words. And those are sometimes all we have, and we understand that. But this man had gotten compassion his whole life and had not changed him. But Jesus brings power. The light of Jesus, the light of God can bring power into our lives to change us, to transform us, to help us in times of need. And so these two stories immediately preceding and immediately following this proclamation of Jesus as being the light of the world tells us this. To a woman who had always gotten the power of judgment, Jesus has compassion that forgives her, gives her new life. To a man who had gotten compassion, kind of empty words, kindness, Jesus gave power to change his life. This is what happens to us when we allow the light of Jesus to come into our world. Those places where we need the compassion of God to forgive us, the light is there. The places of brokenness and need where we need power to live it a different way, Jesus is there. If we think that our sin is so deep and is such a burden that there's no way out, and Jesus has compassion for us and forgiveness. If we've only known and felt the power of shame and judgment and condemnation, maybe we've just experienced it because that's what we're telling ourselves. Maybe the world isn't doing that to us, but we're doing that to us. I know the depth of my sin. There is no hope for me. I'm just living in this darkness. And Jesus comes and says, I am not coming to you to condemn you. I am coming with compassion to forgive you and set you free. Can we bring the light of Jesus in line with our horizon into our lives and set us free with compassion and grace? Or sometimes we're living in the brokenness of our problems and we see our need and we just think there is no one who can help. So many people just have nice words to say to me, but I need something more. And if we can bring the light of Jesus into line with our horizon, then God's like, I'm here to help you. It may not be the exact help we need, but there's going to be a help and a strength to support us and to sustain us, whatever that might be. The light of Jesus is still here to bring compassion and not the power of condemnation. It is here to bring the power of help and strength in times of need. It's what happens when we bring the light of Jesus in line with our horizon. We bring the light of Jesus into our world, into our lives. But Jesus takes it a step farther. Because he doesn't just say, I am the light of the world. He also says, you are the light of the world. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. And so as the people of God, we are now this light in the world. And if the world comes to us, then we need to do exactly what the light of Jesus does. Offer compassion to those who have only known condemnation and judgment. And offer power to those who are in need. Too often what we see in the world around us is the power of condemnation and judgment. You fall short, you make a mistake, the world is going to be quick to pounce on you and condemn you and judge you and drag you through the dirt and the mud. And what's great is that we can now do this anonymously through social media. You can go on to comments and you can create a username and you can just condemn people who make a mistake. And we see it all the time. We've seen it this week. Be careful of those kiss cams at any event. A Coldplay concert, a Penn State basketball game. It took about, 10 seconds for that couple to become a viral meme of condemnation and judgment. Was what they did wrong? Yes. The woman caught in adultery, is what she did wrong? Yes. But can we as as a church or the world offer something different? Can we offer compassion and not the condemnation and the judgment of the world? And then there are people all around us in need. And let's be honest, it's really easy to say, well, I'll pray for you. And we mean it, and we will. And prayer is powerful. But that can also be an empty gesture of compassion. We'll say, I'll pray for you because we're busy. We don't have time to get involved. Getting involved is going to be way too complicated, too messy. We don't know what to do. And so a lot of times it's just easier to offer compassion and not a power that can change people. We're called to be the light of the world, which means just personally, we are called to offer compassion when grace and forgiveness is needed, and power, help, strength when that's needed. But it's also, this is a word to the church. And so we as a church are to be that town on a hill, shining forth the light of Jesus. And what I love about Faith Church is that we are striving to be the light of the world in the fullest sense of what Jesus means. We are striving to offer compassion and not condemnation. There are a lot of churches that only want to offer one way. And if you don't line up with them socially, theologically, politically, in every single way, you're condemned. Really, the message is you're not wanted here. What I love about Faith Church is that we offer compassion. We don't all have to think the same way. We can be gracious with one another. We can work together to understand one another, to get along. Around Jesus were a whole bunch of sinners. One happened to be at Jesus' feet, condemned. The rest of them were all standing there with stones in their hand, wanting to condemn. Too often the church is seen as those standing around wanting to condemn. What I love about Faith Church is that there is a spirit of compassion. You are welcome. We're all sinners. We're not going to cast a stone at you. We're going to love you. We're going to have compassion. We're going to have grace. Thank you for being the light of Jesus and welcoming and working with people who may have differences and disagreements, who may just see the world very differently. But you know what? We are going to come together with compassion to offer the light of Jesus to others. We also offer power when help is needed. We have an amazing mission and outreach ministry. Tangibly tries to help those in need around us. Now, I get it. We can't help every single person in need in our community, but we go to great lengths to try to help those in need. I love the spring and the fall mission trips where we have heard about people in need and we want to make a tangible difference in their lives. And so I get it. We go deep into some people's lives so that we can maybe be the light of Jesus that can transform them. We do it all through the year, trying to be the light of Jesus. This past weekend, I shared with you that our previous pastor, Doyle Klinger, passed away due to cancer. And if you don't know, one of Doyle's huge accomplishments or achievements here at Faith Church, working with all of you, was the creation of the Faith Center. Because people need real help. And so how do we help those in need? And in the early days of the Faith Center, it was run by you. It was run by Faith Church. And it worked to help those in need in our community. And it has grown and grown and grown. And the impact is greater and greater and greater. But the seeds of that came from Faith Church because we wanted to be, you, before I was here, you wanted to be the lights of the world. You wanted to be the town on the hill that would help, tangibly help those in need. Now, thank you for being the light of the world. It's one of the things that makes Faith Church so special to me and special in the world. Is that when Jesus says you are the light of the world, what he's saying is you need to offer compassion and not condemnation. You need to offer power and not just empty words. And day in and day out and week in and week out, we strive to do that. We got to keep going. Light is not static. It's always moving. And it's always moving fast. And so we have to keep moving. So let me end with maybe this challenge. Who do you know that needs God's power? Who do you know? Who do you see with a real need that we can, or that you can help? How can we continue to try to offer light to those living in darkness? And then who do you know that needs compassion and not the power of condemnation? Who do you know that's hurting because of brokenness or failures in their life? And they need to know that they're forgiven and loved. How can you be the light of compassion? All of us, individually together, we need to bring the light of Jesus in line with our horizon. We need to bring the light of Jesus into the fullness of our lives and allow that light to bring compassion where it's needed and power where it's needed. And we are called to be the light of the world and bring compassion where it's needed and power where it's needed. So together, let's bring Jesus, who is the light of the world, into the world. Would you pray with me?